Oh, we actually have been rolling. I am not suicidal. Hey, speaking of suicide,
let's get this over with. Sonny, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. He's like, I'm good. Let's get this over with.
I'm doing better. I'm doing better than your ears. My
Better
God.
than my ears? Oh, thanks.
Jesus.
You know what's funny is like every single video that I make, I inevitably have at least one or two people that makes a comment about my ears. Like, bro, your ears are messed
Your
up.
ears look tumorous.
Yeah, I know. When my kids ask before I teach class, you know, it's like, Coach, they're like, what's up with your ears? Why do they look like that? I tell them, oh, like a dog just grabbed it and just shook it a lot, and you know, this is what happened. But
I've seen cauliflower ear, but that's
anyway. You know why this is useful? This is a good signal. This is a good signal that you know what you're doing, and it helps It helps you avoid fights. You know? So I like my ears. I think
I'm glad.
they're all right.
You have to like.
I don't know if Chelsea likes it, but you know.
Well, she is going out with a deformed person. You know.
Well, that's very open-minded.
Plus, you have the cancer foot. Yeah, it's.
Oh, thanks, man. Cancer foot.
Get cancer ears, cancer foot.
Anyway, so wanted to
let's talk about jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, jiu-jitsu. So like, you know, we were talking over the phone, kind of like with the direction of where we saw jiu-jitsu going, and like, I mentioned there was this like tension between like the competitors, the guys who like are really good at what they do and want to keep it that way, and then the people that, you know, are totally fine with turning their schools into a McDojo and just making money off of it. So
it's sad to me that there's a dichotomy. You know?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be. I feel like I have a good handle on both. And
what do you mean by both?
Well, both sport jiu-jitsu and self-defense.
Oh, I see.
You know, I mean, those are really the two sort of, you know, that go ahead. You know, you have your sport guys who say, well, you know, let's start with the self-defense. You have the self-defense guys that say, well, there's certain things you can't do in the street because it'll get you hurt. And then you got the sport guys who are like, kind of have the attitude, well, I'll do whatever I want to someone who doesn't know anything. Yeah. And they're kind of both right. You know, like there's really, honestly, there's correct aspects to both of what they're saying.
Yeah.
Like there are definitely certain things I wouldn't want to do. I mean, I know how to fight from my back, so if I end up on my back...
But I'm not pulling guard in the street,
right, I'm not going to pull guard.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, if anyone's ever seen me compete, and I don't know why they would watch me, but if anyone's ever seen me compete, like
I watched you. Come on, man.
I pull guard, right? Yeah. I've probably done like 2 takedowns in all of my competition.
But you know how to wrestle, you know.
A little, enough to wrestle some dummy in the street, but that's all I care about.
Right, you know basics.
Yeah.
Like,
I know enough to wrestle a guy down who isn't trained. Because who's getting into a fight? Well, I should be careful because I almost did. But who's getting into fights with trained dudes? You know, it doesn't unless it's in the ring, or it just doesn't happen very often.
Well,
unless someone gets
you never know
of line. But anyway,
you never know though. That's
yeah.
The thing.
You just
you
know.
You don't know who has what skill. You know, not everyone telegraphs that they train.
Right. So
you
know? if I'm in a jiu-jitsu competition and I see some guy standing before me that I have to go against, and I have no idea what his background is, why the would I see? There I went. There's the first one.
That's all right.
Sorry.
We'll bleep it out. Don't worry about it.
Why the heck would I wrestle that guy?
Yeah.
If I don't know whether or not he's a D1 wrestler, he could be a high school wrestler and beat me.
Are you talking about competition now?
Yeah. I'm talking about competition. Okay. Why on earth, in a competition setting, would I ever attempt to wrestle? Unless I'm forced into it by the rule set, or some other situation. But like, if I have my way, I'm going to pull guard because I'm most comfortable.
Right.
I'll put my guard up against anyone. I don't care. I would rather do that, get my guard passed, and then just fight out of it, rather than waste all this time wrestling and then lose. Cause especially when you're older like me, like the gas tank for wrestling is not.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to wrestle. Like I said, I have a lot of confidence in my guard, and I will wrestle anyone with my guard.
So I mean, that's your particular game, though, right? Like,
yeah.
Like
but that's sport jiu-jitsu,
right?
But when it comes to a fight, so this is where the self-defense guys the guys that argue against sport jiu-jitsu, and I honestly don't know how many of those guys are around anymore, but like really, but those guys that sort of argue against sport jiu-jitsu, like they need to realize that a sport jiu-jitsu guy, which I would probably consider myself a sport jiu-jitsu guy, but I'm also self-defense guy. But the difference is like I know the difference. I know the things that I should and should not do in a fight in the street.
You've also been punched in the face before.
Yeah, and I've also been punched in the face. So
Exactly.
So, you know I have the wherewithal to know not to try to do an M&RE roll on someone
In the street fight.
in a street fight. Okay, like I'm not stupid. I'm not going to do dumb in a street fight just because I like to pull guard in the gym.
Yeah.
I play turtle a lot in the gym. I play the turtle guard. Never in my life would I do that in a real fight.
Yeah,
ever.
I despise turtle. I think it's a terrible defensive position.
I like it, and I think it's fun, and it allows me to slow the game down.
in a sport
in a
role.
sport
Yeah,
setting.
but like this is so.
But in MMA or in a real fight, you turtle up, you're going to get killed.
Yeah,
You're going to get kneed in the face. Like, I know the danger. That's the thing. I know the dangers of doing certain things in the street, but I'm a black belt, and I have the calmness under pressure to know not to. I've been in a street fight, guys, and what do you know? I didn't even take it to the ground. You know, I didn't even bring it to the ground.
I remember that. That was actually
I finished
a funny
it
story.
standing in a guillotine. So there you go. It's like what would a sport guy do in a street fight? A standing guillotine is what I did. So there's a lot of these guys that like to say about sport jiu-jitsu guys doing the wrong thing, but there's also been plenty of times where I've seen sport jiu-jitsu guys do the wrong thing. So this is where I'm going to take the other side. And I hate to bring up this example. I really, really hate to bring up this example because I actually absolutely love this grappler. So I don't want to seem like I'm the guy. I'm not. But look what happened to Gary Tonin when he just tried to heel hook somebody in an MMA fight. He got knocked the out. So there is, I'm sorry, sport jiu-jitsu guys, but there is some truth to you really shouldn't go on your back unless you have to. Unless you're Damian Maya and you're a wizard from the guard, like you have no business. And when I say wizard in the guard, I mean under MMA conditions. You know what I mean? He's not just a guard wizard. He's a guard wizard while people are throwing punches at him.
Well, can I take that fight kind of in like, you know, the totality of how I see Gary's game? Because
again, I'm not.
No, I know,
saying anything negative.
I know you're not. But I also want to.
My favorite grappler is Gary Tonin, so that was heartbreaking for me.
Yeah, Sonny does love Gary. So here's the thing though, right? You got to take it into the context of his other fights and kind of who his opponent had to prepare. You know, Gary has a win in MMA by leg lock. And
Ryan Hall's got many wins.
That's also true. And funny enough, Ryan Hall was the guy who was coaching Gary's opponent, you know, on what Gary might attempt to do. And they have different leg locking styles and games, but you know, he had a good idea of when to strike. You know, when he was in position to strike and could afford to do so without sacrificing his ability to defend the lace. You know, so Gary's opponent was very well versed in how to defend, you know, the leg lock game. Like you saw it in the way that fight turned out. But Gary also has wins by leg lock. There's many other people that have wins by leg lock. You know, and like, look, had Gary been successful with that strategy, like the conversation would be different.
Right.
People would be like, oh my God, like haters like that think leg locks don't work in fights. Like look what just happened.
And I'm not even saying that, by the way. I don't want to get it twisted. I'm not saying leg locks won't work in a fight. I'm just saying.
You're just pointing out the potential danger. Yeah,
right. There is
true.
danger that has to be acknowledged. You can't just go into it thinking, oh, I know leg locks, so it's over.
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, you know.
Because I've seen people eat leg locks. You know, like what about Uncle Coach Kevin when he did his fight to win championship fight? Forget who he went against, but he had that guy inside heel hook. You know, I mean, the guy's leg was straight, so that's probably what saved him. But
I think he popped it.
For sure that guy limped home.
I think he popped it, though.
For sure that guy limped home.
Yeah.
But the point is, he limped home with the belt, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, leg locks are great, but once the other guy knows leg locks too, like I'm more of a defensive leg lock guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know
you don't go for them offensively.
I don't go for them offensively, but if somebody puts me in one, I'll stay in the game.
Yeah.
Sure, I'll counter. I'll try to counter and do whatever, because I'm comfortable enough being in those positions where I'm not going to just freak out when somebody laces me up.
Yeah.
And that's the
and
thing.
I think that's important. You know, I tell my students, like, look, I don't care if you become like a great offensive leg locker, but you better be really good at pummeling. You better be really good at escaping. You better be you better have like some basic competence in like some of the submissions, you know? And honestly, like if you want to be really good defensively with leg locks, you need to train offense too. Because training offense is gonna teach you how people escape.
That's another thing that drives me crazy. People that want to learn leg locks and they come in and they say, well, I just want to learn how to defend leg locks.
Yeah, it doesn't.
And I just immediately tell them, like, okay, how would you think that would sound if you came in and said, I just want to defend arm bars. I don't want to learn arm bars.
Right.
I just want to learn how to defend arm bars.
Also, the other aspect to that is like, look, you know, and Danaher talks about this a lot. When you're escaping a pin, and we could consider a leg lace a pin, you know, in some ways, wouldn't you rather immediately go into an offensive situation rather than back away into a neutral one? You know, so like if you're laced up, wouldn't you rather have the ability to
use the opportunity,
counter and get to a better lace instead of just
And that's
escaping?
primarily when I personally attack in leg locks, is when someone laces me up, I use the opportunity to, you know, reverse the lace.
Yeah, counter and transition.
Counter them. And so I don't panic when somebody puts me in a lace. And I think a lot of these guys that don't leg lock is how they get beat. Is they as soon as they get laced up, they panic, they don't know what to do, which is true, they don't know what to do. And then they get caught.
Yeah.
And you know, and sometimes you see these guys getting caught and you're like, man, he could have got out of that easy. You know, if you're an experienced leg locker watching.
If you're in the sport game now at a high level, like you need to know leg locks.
Yeah, you have to.
Like you needed to know leg locks 3 years ago, but now it's like even more essential.
But you know what's crazy about the game? I've seen it evolve since then. Like a lot of people think the last big evolution was leg locks. I think the last big evolution is guys becoming great at everything. Like literally,
there's certainly more of that. Like you see, you see at the high level now. Like everybody's got better wrestling, for instance.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like
everyone's better at wrestling. Everyone's better at leg locks. Everyone's better at everything.
I support that 100%. Like I've always thought of wrestling as fantastic because in the neutral game, it lets you determine where it's going to take place and it lets you determine the pace. The better wrestler chooses the pace of the match. And they choose where it's going to go. If they want to pull guard, they can pull guard. If they want to pass, they can pass. The other person, though, doesn't have the choice to pass. So if the other person is not as good of a wrestler, they need to pull guard and they need to start from there, or you know they can try to take them down. But those are their only those are their only options. They're probably not going to win the takedown game, which means they're going to start from a guard position. And if they're really good at the guard, that's fine for some people. But some people have really good passing games, and then if they don't have the wrestling to get them there, then they can't implement.
I feel like you can make
unless they sweep. But
I feel like you can make it into ADCC without having any wrestling skills, but you can't become a champion. I don't think you could be a champion.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean,
because I've seen it. I've seen guys get into ADCC.
Dude, I don't know though. Even winning trials now with no wrestling skill, like that's hard. Like
not wrestling skills, but I mean, you know, guys know how to play. Like think about Gordon when he had his first ADCC win. Right?
Yeah.
Like he played a lot of guard. And he was real smart about. Remember that? He was sitting on the floor and he would kind of come up to one knee, but he wouldn't get up.
Yeah.
And he did that a lot because he knew the rules.
Yeah.
He knew if he actually stands up, he's forced to stay there.
Right.
And he wanted the ability to be able to sit back down. So he's playing this weird sort of like combat
he's like he was like trying to time his moments to wrestle up and go for sweeps, but never actually come up if he thought it would fail.
Right.
You know, which is very smart. You know,
extremely good strategy.
Yeah. That and also being like one of the best, if not the best, submission guy, like pure submission guy in the world. You know, so
there's no one better.
That bringing that to an ADCC rule set with an incredible guard that like people have a really, really hard time passing. Like that's enough to win. You know, he showed that.
Yeah, absolutely. And he did it with a broken hand.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But
and with those stomach problems
that
he's got, you know. I haven't been on social media in like almost a year, so I don't know.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Best decision I ever made in my life, by the way.
I've turned away from traditional social media as much. I still sometimes post, but I post mainly to Gab now because it's a free speech social media site, And I encourage you guys check out Gab. It's a great site. I want to bring it back to the self-defense versus sport conversation though, because we got sidetracked. But I think a little bit of both is helpful, and being a good sport guy will make you better at self-defense.
Yeah, of course.
And here's why. Like, in your own school, you have people with their own specific styles, and generally it kind of revolves somewhat around the instructor's style and what they like to teach. You need to expose yourself to different games and different offensive strategies from other people. Because, like, think about it this way. If you trained 5 years exclusively at your school and you've never trained anywhere else, you've never competed anywhere else, there's many attacks that you are just not prepared for that other people are going to do to you and you're going to have no answer for. So, going out and competing is very useful in that sense. You're going to learn how to defend things you wouldn't normally defend. You might even get exposed to some attacks where you're like, oh man, I should learn how to do that.
And
like,
for
that
the
was
people
cool,
who are listening to this and thinking, well, I really don't want to compete, but I still want that opportunity. Well, cross-train.
Yeah, 100%.
And when people come to visit your gym that you've never seen before, roll with them. That's the same thing. Because you get the same nervous energy that you get in competition. So it's good.
I wouldn't say to the same degree, but I get what you're saying.
Sure, but there's other things that you can do as an instructor that I do. In fact, today's Friday, right? So we'll be doing it today. Is I have an anxiety-inducing class that I create. So the way that I induce anxiety in my class is I circle people up and have two people roll in front of everyone else, right? And so that adds a bit of pressure to their roll, just mental pressure. But if you can't learn how to do that, how are you going to win in a fight?
Right.
You know what I mean? So my goal for people, to me, a black belt is someone who can perform all the moves, and of course they can tap out black belts, and they have the skill. But more important to me than that is their ability to fight under duress.
Yeah, to implement that under pressure.
Exactly. That to me is a black belt. Someone who actually can think, right? Use their fine motor skill set while they're potentially getting beat up.
And I think that's a good simulation, and it's a way to produce that in somebody without competition.
But I agree, competition is the best.
That. I'm very.
And taking MMA fights is even better.
Even better. Though I don't want that brain.
Not everybody wants to go down that route, because that's a hard life. It's a hard camp.
It's hard. It's hard on your body, and frankly, I've done one MMA fight, and the pressure I had in that MMA fight was so much worse than anything I've ever experienced in a jiu-jitsu tournament. And I get anxiety sometimes when I compete.
And unfortunately, you're doing all that. You're not getting paid, so it's all totally for self.
When in the beginning you're not. That's true. But MMA is great. It's the best simulation to a real fight. So if you're successful in MMA, you'll be successful in a fight. For sure. And jiu-jitsu tournaments, not anywhere close to that, but in much the same way, they give you that anxiety like you talked about, and going out there and implementing your game when there's stress, when there's pressure, that's a good way of getting that developed in yourself. So I agree. I think people should compete, and in that way, it is kind of a dichotomy between the pure sport, the pure self-defense, but if you go out and compete, that has elements that we've already talked about that will help you in a self-defense situation, And I would even say simulating that is necessary, At the same time, you don't want to have a school where you produce guys that have no idea how to take a punch, that they don't even know that certain positions are really bad positions where they could be hit, So you can be a half guard player, for instance, in jiu-jitsu, but you got to know that if you fight, you don't want to be a half guard player. That's something that you need to understand, and that's why when I start my advanced classes twice a week, what we're going to do is very light touch striking with MMA gloves, and we're going to do elbow pads too, because that's another big thing is. You don't have hand wraps in the street, and it's very easy to break your hand when you punch.
I tell this to the police that train with me all the time. I'm like, don't punch people.
Yeah, elbows, man.
First of all, it's a bad look. Second of all, you're going to break your own hand.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not practicing punching, And if you do want to practice punching, you should do it with Tony Spain in Sarasota.
He's actually right next to me.
Yeah, Tony's a good guy. But yeah, most people don't practice how to punch. So I tell people, use open palm strikes and elbows. I mean, you're not going to hurt yourself as much.
Yeah, I agree. And elbows are devastating, man.
Oh,
so much power behind them, and it cuts people too. Like that's
absolutely.
So
you can cause abrasions and then.
Yeah, and we're not gonna, just to be clear, like when we train, like I'm not gonna have people hitting each other hard, but at least not in the beginning, not while they're like blue belts. But I want people to understand, like, hey, this is a position you could get hit from, and it's not somewhere you want to stay and like just attack submissions if it's a self-defense situation, But we're only doing that twice a week, right? The other 3 days we're going to be doing normal jiu-jitsu, but I think it's useful for that reason, And the other thing too, going back to like pure self-defense, the guys that are the best at teaching self-defense are the ones that pressure test everything that they do, And this is this goes back to like the conversation we had in the beginning about the McDojo versus like the guys that want to produce serious people. They don't necessarily have to be competitors, but they want to produce serious grapplers, right? And the McDojo guys are sort of like the people that they don't really pressure test much of what they teach, and maybe it's legitimate things that they're teaching, and they learned it from somebody else, but they're not teaching their students in a way that is preparing them for resistance, and if you're not training for resistance, what you're learning is like dancing. These women, it's like useless.
These women, they go take like these 6-week Krav Maga courses and think they're ready for the world.
Yeah, there's no magic bullet, man, and it takes a lot longer than 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And again, like my problem with self-defense seminars is some of them, at least. If they tell you like, all right, now you're good, and you can defend yourself after like a weekend course.
Here's your certificate.
Yeah, here's your certificate. That's crazy. Like if you're doing a self-defense seminar.
You want to know what's crazy is that's what they do in the military right now. If you go to the Army and you take combatives and you decide to get your combatives black belt, you can get it in 80 hours.
80 hours?
80 hours to a combatives black belt, from white to black.
Yeah, I mean it's better. It's better than nothing, and I think it's. I think it's so. Here's what I think. For the military, it's useful, but obviously, if you're in the military, you don't want to spend the majority of your time training jiu-jitsu. You want to spend the majority of your time training to be effective with a rifle.
Of course.
Like, and they are doing.
Just to give you an example,
I
just gave this guy a blue belt. This guy, I call him Patch because he's got a skin condition, but. But he was in the military.
I'm sure. Army. Is he okay with that nickname?
He's fine with it.
Okay,
he's fine with it.
Just clarifying.
He's fine with it. But yeah,
military people are tough anyway.
Yeah, no, he actually likes it. Yeah, we have nicknames for everybody at the gym, and their nicknames are pretty accurate. Like,
mine is Robot Dolphin.
Yeah, I have a guy in my gym who literally looks exactly like Jeffrey Dahmer. So what do you think his nickname is?
Dahmer.
It's Jeffrey Dahmer. And then I have another guy that looks like a serial killer, Charlie Manson. Although Manson technically never killed anyone himself, right? So that's kind of controversial.
Well,
but,
by proxy.
Yeah, but we do have a Charlie Manson. It's crazy. We have some crazy-looking people that come to the gym. But yeah, so Patch was telling me he's in the Army, and he was a white belt, and he could tap out his combatives black belt instructors.
Yeah.
As a jiu-jitsu white belt.
Well, dude, because some people, like, after 80 hours of training will only be marginally better than when they started. And some people after 80 hours of training, because they have the intuition, they have the athleticism.
They're gangsters.
Insane, Zach and Nate, for instance, like beasts.
Or Dylan.
Yeah, or Dylan, So 80 hours, for some people is like they're only a little bit better because like their body still hasn't figured out a lot of the mechanics and kind of the strategy behind jiu-jitsu. And other people, it's like an insane jump. So yeah, I believe that story 100%, and that's why like 80 hours is not a lot of time. It's not a lot of time to devote to anything, I mean, if you break it down, right, if you're coming 3-4 days a week to class, you're getting about 15 hours a month. So that's like 5 months of training, maybe a little bit more. That's like 80 hours is not a lot of time. So well, look, I think we covered a lot, but like,
not enough though, not nearly.
Not enough. Well, we'll do this again. Well, I want to talk more. I want to talk more about McDojos, but
let's have one more quick conversation.
Okay.
So I just want to put out there. I started training in 2007, And back then, there was a decent amount of schools, nothing like it is today. But I ended up becoming an instructor as a blue belt. Okay.
I remember that you helped teach the beginner class.
I taught. No, actually, I had 2 locations.
Oh, really?
I was responsible for 2 locations.
Okay.
So this was back in Connecticut. I was responsible for the Massachusetts location, where I taught 2 nights a week. It was only open 2 nights a week. So, not terribly great, opportunities for training. And then I would teach at the Yukon Club in Connecticut. So that was my responsibilities for this instructor that I was under. So as
this
a
was
blue
before
belt,
Rob, to be clear.
Oh yeah. This is long before Rob. So I was actually an instructor as a blue belt. Now today you wouldn't want an instructor as a blue belt. However,
times have changed.
I've seen some videos where they people also poo-poo on the idea of being a brown belt instructor. That one, I just
Who said that?
I have no idea.
Say that to me. No,
I have
I'm
no
just
idea
kidding.
who said that. But I just want to say, I started my gym as a brown belt, and we are now 6 years in. I've been a black belt for 5 years almost, and we're doing extremely well.
Yeah.
And I started as a brown belt. And by the way,
I wouldn't consider in terms of how well you're doing as how many students you have or how much money you're making.
I was gonna.
Although I think it's more so look how many people you've exposed to jiu-jitsu. Look how many people you've brought into the philosophy of our martial art, and that's fantastic. And you're doing it in a way that's really good. You're very meritocratic with your promotions. You don't give anything away. If you're doing that, that's all you need. And I would say even a purple belt could start a school as long as they have guidance from an instructor. So I wouldn't want a purple belt, promoting past blue with permission from their instructor, but they can definitely teach a beginner course, right? They can start off when they're a purple belt, and then by the time that they're brown belt, they'll probably have a few blue belts, and at that point, they should be good enough with their teaching to get them to the next level.
Do I think every brown belt should be owning their own school? No, because just like any other belt, there's huge discrepancies.
Yeah. Certainly a McDojo brown belt shouldn't.
I've rolled with some brown belts, and I was like, I can't imagine how that guy got a brown belt.
I've rolled with professor black belts with multiple stripes on their belt. Yes. And I'm like, I can't believe this guy.
And I can't, and that's the same thing. I'm like, who gave this guy a black belt?
By the way, I've also rolled with blue belts that I'm like, how the hell is this guy still a blue belt? It works both ways,
Of course.
Ultimately, look, the belt is a good signal, but it's not the only signal. You need to take
I just want to say
everything
this
into account.
because I know we have to go. I just want to say the number of stripes on your black belt doesn't entitle you to some grand opinion, because
Amen.
Stripes on a black belt are participation trophies. Literally, they're there for how long? Congratulations, you haven't died yet. Here's another stripe. And then if you get old enough, it's congratulations, you haven't died yet. Here's a red and black belt. And then if you make it to 90 years old, congratulations, you haven't died yet. Here's your red belt. Meanwhile, pretty much if you're 90 years old, any decent blue belt's gonna you up in a fight. So this idea of I'm going to go on record as saying that while I might continue to get promotions from Rob, I will only wear my blank black belt, the black belt that has that doesn't have a patch on it, just a straight black belt. That's my little protest against.
Okay. So you'll only wear that one.
I will
to be clear, the 2 times per year that you put the gi on.
Yeah, I will only wear that belt because I think stripes on a black belt are 100% absolute. They mean absolutely nothing. Nothing. Now that I've said that, let's go in the other room.
All right.
Great to meet you
guys. I hope you liked the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Maybe we'll do more talks with Sonny. He's very unfiltered.
Like, subscribe, hit the bell.
Like and subscribe, hit the notification bell. Thanks, guys. I hope you guys tune in next time. Take care.